Hi, this is Zach with Worn&Wound. Today I'll be taking a look at the Christopher Ward C8 Regulator. We've looked at several of Christopher Ward's pilot watches before, the C8, the C11, the C1000, and now this one is one of their newest offerings, and definitely an interesting departure from the other ones we've seen. The C8 is actually the same series as this, but that was a classic pilot watch. The C11 was more of an aviator style, and the C1000 was their ceramic cased chronograph. And this is clearly different in the fact that it's a regulator. And regular watches are something that I personally find very interesting. They're not as common. We looked at one before by Oris, which was a diver. There's a couple of dress watches out there. Bell & Ross makes a watch that is perhaps conceptually most similar to this, and that is another aviation-inspired regulator, but this one has a much cleaner design, much more kind of contemporary look to it. So what you have here is a pilot watch with the hours at 12, the seconds at 6, and then a minute hand on the main dial. And the idea behind that is, you know, at least I believe in the World War II bombing runs, you know, the minutes was the most significant thing to be looking at, so they just put a lot more emphasis on that in the dial and the design. So that's kind of where the concept for this watch comes from. And then to do this, they have a Unitas 6498 movement in it. It's a manual wound movement with a bespoke module on top. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to recent news, Christopher Ward is now a true manufacturer. They've teamed up, partnered with a manufacturer in Switzerland, so they can do these kind of interesting in-house things, which they've been doing for a little while. And yeah, and then you get this just kind of very cool, very aggressive looking pilot watch with some classic details to it. It comes in steel or PVD. I quite like the PVD. It's on the more expensive side for Christopher Ward. It's $1,425, but I think you're getting something quite interesting. So let's take a closer look. The case of the C8 regulator is quite large. The other C8 models are as well, and that just kind of stays true to kind of classic Flieger design. But also when you have a manual wound Unitas movement in it, those always tend to be larger watches, I think never below 41. So you have a 44 millimeter case here, 52.6 millimeters lug to lug with a 22 millimeter lug width. But it is actually quite flat at 11 millimeters tall, which at this scale really does feel quite flat, which gives it just an overall kind of smaller and a little bit more sleek feel to it. But yeah, then otherwise it's a very kind of classic pilot design. You know, you have a long, slender lug, slab sides, a broad bezel. It's all matte PVD. Like I said before, there is a steel model, but something about the color, you know, here, I really think this watch works incredibly well in PVD. On the right side, you have a massive onion crown here. It's 8 millimeters in diameter by 5 millimeters tall. Little C Ward logo on the side, and you know, since it is a crank-in movement here, you are going to be using it a lot. It does affect the comfort of the watch, but I'll talk about that when it's on my wrist. Looking now at the back really quickly, you have this huge sapphire window showing off the Unitas movement inside. It's really, you know, just a fun movement to look at always, so I'm glad that they showed it off. The dial of the C8 regulator very clearly speaks to Flieger watches, pilot watches, and you know, this has a very clear, clean, kind of to-the-point presentation, but with the twist of being a regulator. So I think it mixes things up to have, you know, a bit of a unique personality. So yeah, the biggest difference, you know, as I mentioned in the intro, is that you have the hours at 12, the seconds at 6, and then just the minutes on the central dial. So you have this broken up functionality, which at a glance might look like a chronograph from a distance, but it's it's not. So looking at the main index here, you just have kind of classic rectangles and small marks for the minutes with numerals going around, skipping a few here and there, and then these large subdials that are really pushed kind of far out from the center, and they're really large subdials. So you have the hours here, and then the seconds there, as I said. It's actually a remarkably easy dial to read. It might take like a half an hour or something of glancing at it to get used to not seeing the hour hand on the center, but once you're used to it, there's a logic to reading it from the top to bottom, and I actually just find it almost easier at a glance to read. Especially, I feel like you always have a sense of the hour a little bit more so than the minute, so you kind of know it's 4, and then you look for the minute. So it's actually very, very fast. The look of it, I love the use of old radium loom here. It's a faux patina loom. It's a super luminova that is colored to look like radium that is aged. So you get this creamy yellow color. And we've seen this on many other watches. The downside of it, it doesn't glow that well. It doesn't get very bright, though it does glow like an even tone. But, you know, on this watch with the mix of the black case, matte black dial, the nice vintage leather strap, it's the perfect kind of warm tone to it. I don't think the watch is trying to look like it's actually old and fake in that kind of way. To me, it just is like a well-chosen color for it. Hands, you have classic kind of these big Roman sword hands. I like that they use those on the subdials and still made them quite large. I think they're very, very clear and easy to read, and they also glow quite well. Powering the Christopher Ward C8 Regulator is a Unitas 6498 manual wound movement with a special module on top to give it the regulator function. It's been a little while since we've seen a Unitas movement, so I just wanted to take a look at it, show it to you, because they're always fun to look at. So you have this massive once pocket watch movement that is, you know, now like this staple workhorse for an inexpensive, somewhat inexpensive, obviously this watch isn't inexpensive, manual movement. It's really big, everything's really clear and fun to look at. It's a 17 jewel movement with a frequency of 18,000 beats per hour. You have this really large balance here that's just, you know, you can just see it beating. It's really nice to look at. Underneath that you have some decoration all around, but underneath that you have a perlage plate, which is nice. It kind of offsets the balance a little bit. Then on these main plates here you have a light Cote de Genève. On this large gear here above the barrel, you have a Christopher Ward logo in blue. The screws are not, sometimes you see these in these blued screws. These are polished screws. I know with Christopher Ward's new movement, they made a point that the screws were flat polished and actually really kind of paid a lot of attention to them, and they were intentionally not blue. They were this other high-end kind of finish to them. So I think that might be what's going on here. But yeah, very classic movement, fun to look at. You can, you know, when you wind it, just see everything turn. So yeah, it's just cool. On the wrist, the C8 Regulator does wear quite large. It is a big watch at 44 millimeters, but it feels very well proportioned and it looks really, really cool. I think this is one of my favorite, actually, of the C8 Ward pilot watches I've tried. There's something about it, it's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more in your face than their other designs, and it just works very, very well. Like I said before, the mix of kind of the strap to the case to the radium loom just looks great. So it has a really, really nice, fully thought out palette going on. The one negative to it is, for me, the crown. As I've been wearing it, it's a very large crown. This always happens with these big onion crowns, but it does hit you during the day, and you will feel that. So, you know, you can get used to that, but it is a bit of a downer. I almost wish the crown was on the other side, but that would have flipped everything over. So I understand that they had to put it there, but it is a bit of a nuisance at this size. The watch also feels, I think, almost a little bit larger than it is. Like, I don't think it looks too big for me, though it is larger than a watch I normally wear. But because it's so flat, which is on one hand cool, like I like that, it makes it a little bit more wearable. I also think it just makes it look larger, and the dial itself is also very flat. So it really, you know, it's just a big seeming watch. Looking at the strap it came on, this is, I think, a favorite strap that I've seen from Christopher Ward. So it's this vintage leather strap. It's got this beautiful grain and texture to it, really, really nicely finished edges. It's actually a very thin strap, and that's partially because it uses their patented Bader or Batter deployant clasp, Bader rather being their new partner. I clearly designed this, engineered it, and it's a really, really nice deployant. I think I didn't really appreciate it last time I saw it until I've had more other deployants. You know, typically when you have a deployant clasp, you have the buttons on the bottom half, and I actually find that that can dig in. This one, it's higher up, and it's just in this nicely kind of designed package here, so it doesn't hit your wrist if you go like that. Then you open it up, and it's just very clean. Creates this really nice, almost seamless, you know, transition. So you get just a very, I don't know, it just works again, just a very well thought out package. What the only downside of it, not potentially downside, the only fact is that for it to work, the strap has to slip through this compartment. So you end up with these very, very thin straps. And I know for some people, especially on pilot watches, they like these really thick 4.5 millimeter leather straps. I personally find this very comfortable, so I wouldn't change it, but it isn't like the strap you might expect. But color-wise, tone-wise, quality-wise, this is definitely one of the nicest leather straps we've seen from Christopher Ward. To wrap up, the C8 Regulator by Christopher Ward, I think it's one of my favorite pilot watches, if not my favorite pilot watch by the brand. I think when you look at their lineup, it fits in very well. There's like the less expensive C5s, and there's the more kind of classic looking C8s and the C11s. Then there's the high-end C1000 with its ceramic case, which is more of a modern inspired a pilot watch, and now here you have another World War II Flieger style, but one with the unique addition of a regulator module, which I think just works so well in this style. It definitely will set this apart from other Flieger watches you've seen, and I think they executed it very well. I mean, granted, it's a very straightforward kind of to the book design, but it's the little things that make it work, and I think especially in this watch, it's the palette and the mix of materials. So it executes to be a very attractive watch. It is on the big side, but I think that comes with the territory of these kind of classic-inspired Flieger watches. So if you can't pull off a 44mm watch, this one isn't for you. It is also a bit expensive. It's $4,425. I mean, that's nothing to scoff at, and it's definitely on the higher end for Christopher Ward. It does have this additional mechanical element to it, which I think is where the price is coming from. And I think for what you're getting, it certainly feels like a watch that's well executed and worth a decent amount of money. So if you're looking for a different Flieger watch and one that's from a great brand that's doing very interesting things these days, Christopher Ward C8 Regulator is certainly one to consider. Please read the full review on Worn&Wound. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you.